Jake Martinez stood by the big window of the starship. He watched the purple storm spinning around the planet below. The planet looked angry and dangerous. Lightning flashed through the thick clouds like angry fingers trying to grab something. This was Kepler 442b, one of the most dangerous worlds humans had ever found. The storms on this planet were not normal storms. They carried special energy that could break any machine in seconds. If a spaceship got too close without protection, it would stop working and crash. Jake had read about this planet many times, but seeing it with his own eyes made his stomach feel tight. Captain Lisa Burke walked up to him. She carried a flat computer pad in her hands. Her face looked serious, the way it always did when something bad was happening. "Jake, I have news about your next mission," she said. "The Veltar aliens have asked for you specifically. They want you to go down to that planet and help their people." Jake turned away from the window. The Veltar were big cat-like aliens who stood much taller than humans. They had sharp teeth and claws, and they were very strong. Most of them thought humans were weak and too emotional to be good soldiers. "What happened down there?" Jake asked. "There is a research station called Kethvara. 12 Veltar scientists were studying the storms. 3 days ago, they stopped talking to us. We think they are in trouble." Jake looked at the computer pad. The research station was built in a valley between tall mountains. The mountains gave some protection from the worst storms, but not much. A huge storm was coming that would make the whole area too dangerous to live in for many weeks. "The Veltar told us something strange," Captain Burke continued. "They said there are cubs at the station. Young Veltar children. When I asked about them, the Veltar leaders got very upset. They kept saying that no human would understand what they call the sacred duty." Jake frowned. He knew that Veltar cared very much about their young ones. Cubs were very important to their culture. But why would they think humans would not understand? "There is something else you should know," the captain said. "The Veltar leaders told me they expect you to leave the cubs behind if things get dangerous. They said it is the human way to think only about staying alive." This made Jake angry, but he did not show it on his face. He had fought beside Veltar soldiers in battles against their enemies. He had proven himself many times, but they still thought humans were selfish and weak. Jake had grown up in a small town where everyone helped each other. His father was a firefighter who ran into burning buildings to save people. His mother was a teacher who stayed late to help students who were struggling. They taught him that strong people protect those who cannot protect themselves. "The storm is moving fast," Captain Burke explained. "You will have only 6 hours to get everyone out before it hits. After that, nothing can survive down there." Jake studied the information on the computer pad. The research station had 12 buildings connected by covered walkways. Some of the buildings were already damaged by lightning strikes. The main power was not working, so the people inside were using emergency power that would not last long. "How many people can my shuttle carry?" Jake asked. "Amy Collins will be your pilot. The shuttle can safely carry 6 passengers, maybe 8 if you remove some equipment. But Jake, if there are really 12 adults and some cubs down there, you cannot take everyone in one trip." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The storm would not wait for a second trip. Anyone left behind would die. "The Veltar think you will save the adults and leave the cubs," Captain Burke said quietly. "They said humans always choose the easy way when things get hard." Jake remembered his first meeting with Veltar officers 2 years ago. They had looked at him like he was a child playing soldier. One of them had said that humans were too soft to be real warriors because they cared too much about feelings. But Jake had proven them wrong in battle. He had saved Veltar lives and fought beside them against their enemies. He thought he had earned their respect, but apparently they still saw humans as weak. "The cubs are very young." Captain Burke continued reading from her notes. "Veltar children cannot handle stress the way adults can. If they get scared, they become wild and impossible to control. The Veltar say even their own parents have trouble with frightened cubs." Jake thought about his sister's children back on Earth. When they got scared during thunderstorms, they would run to him and he would hold them until they felt safe. Children were children, no matter what planet they came from. "When do I leave?" Jake asked. "In 1 hour. The storm is moving faster than we thought. You might have even less than 6 hours." Jake nodded and started to walk away, but Captain Burke called his name. "Jake, the Veltar are testing you. They want to see what humans really are. If you leave those cubs behind, it will prove everything they believe about us." "But if you try to save everyone and fail, people will die." Jake stopped walking. He understood what she meant. This mission was about more than just rescuing people. It was about showing the galaxy what humans were really like. Captain, can I ask you something? What would you do if those were human children down there? Captain Burke smiled sadly. I would find a way to save them all even if it seemed impossible. Then you know what I have to do. Jake went to his room to get ready. He put on his special storm suit that would protect him from the electrical energy on the planet. He checked his equipment twice to make sure everything worked. As he walked to the shuttle bay, other crew members wished him luck. They had heard about the mission. Everyone knew it was dangerous, maybe impossible. Sergeant Amy Collins was already checking the shuttle when Jake arrived. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet, calm and steady in any emergency. Ready for a fun trip to the storm planet? She asked with a grin. Just get me down there in one piece, Amy. Getting back up might be the hard part. I heard about the Cubs. How many people are we really talking about? Jake looked out at the angry planet through the shuttle window. Too many for one trip. Then we better figure out how to make one trip enough. As the shuttle prepared to launch, Jake thought about what the Veltar expected him to do. They thought he would look at the situation, do the math, and choose to save the people who had the best chance of surviving. But they did not understand humans at all. Jake's father had taught him that you do not choose who to save based on who is easiest to carry. You find a way to carry everyone or you die trying. The shuttle doors closed and the engine started. Soon they would find out if one human could prove an entire alien race wrong about what it meant to be human. The shuttle shook like a toy in the hands of an angry child as Amy flew through the storm clouds. Lightning hit their protective shields again and again, making bright flashes that hurt to look at. The whole ship buzzed and hummed from the electrical energy trying to get inside. Jake held onto his seat as the shuttle bounced up and down. Through the front window, he could see huge clouds that looked like mountains made of purple and black smoke. Lightning danced between them like living snakes made of pure energy. This is worse than the weather report said, Amy called out over the noise. The storm is moving much faster. We might only have 4 hours instead of 6. Jake felt his heart beat faster. 4 hours was not much time to figure out how to save everyone and get back to safety. The research station appeared below them through a break in the clouds. It looked like a small group of metal domes connected by tubes. Several of the buildings were dark, and Jake could see black marks where lightning had hit them. Pieces of broken equipment were scattered around the landing area. Landing zone ahead, Amy said. But Jake, I am seeing some really bad readings. The storm front is moving like a wall of death. When it gets here, nothing will survive. The shuttle touched down on a flat area near the main building. Wind howled around them, carrying dust and small rocks that hit the hull like bullets. Through the window, Jake could see the research station more clearly. Half of the buildings looked badly damaged. Keep the engines running, Amy. We might need to leave fast. Jake put on his helmet and checked his suit one more time. The special clothing would protect him from the electrical energy, but it felt heavy and awkward. He opened the shuttle door and stepped out into the chaos. The wind tried to push him over as he ran toward the nearest building. The air tasted like metal and electricity. His suit's computer beeped warnings about dangerous energy levels all around him. Inside the main building, emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. Broken equipment sparked and smoked. Jake followed the sound of voices down a long hallway that smelled like burned metal and fear. He found them in what used to be the main laboratory. 3 adult Veltar had built a shelter using tables and broken equipment. When they saw Jake, their golden eyes went wide with surprise. Human. They sent only one human? The biggest Veltar stood up slowly. He was tall and powerful looking, but Jake could see he was hurt. Blood stained his fur on one side. Lieutenant Commander Martinez from the UES Horizon. I'm here to get you out, Jake said. Then he saw what the Veltar were protecting and his breath caught in his throat. 7 small Veltar cubs huddled behind the adults. They were tiny compared to their protectors with big eyes and soft, fluffy fur. One had a bandage around its small arm. They looked scared and tired, pressing against each other for comfort. I am Dr. Zethkan, the leader of this expedition, the big Veltar said. These are Dr. Velnara and Dr. Kolmiran. He pointed to the other adults. Dr. Velnara was clearly hurt, holding her side carefully. Dr. Kolmiran was lying down and did not look good at all. The cubs were part of our research, Dr. Velnara explained. Her voice was tight with pain. We were studying how young ones learn to work together. When the storms hit, their transport ship was damaged. We cannot move them quickly, and some of us are too hurt to travel fast. Jake looked around the makeshift shelter. 3 injured adults, 7 small cubs, and a storm that would kill them all in 4 hours. His shuttle could maybe carry 6 people safely, 8 if they were very lucky. The cubs cannot survive the trip to your ship, Dr. Zethkin said sadly. Young Veltar needs special care when they are frightened. They will panic and become impossible to control. You should take the adults who can help with the escape. Jake stared at the alien scientist. You are asking me to leave children behind? They are cubs, not human children. Your kind does not understand the difference. When staying alive is most important, hard choices must be made. This is why our leaders knew you would abandon them. One of the smallest cubs, barely as tall as Jake's knee, walked toward him with curious eyes. It made soft chittering sounds and reached out to touch his gloved hand with tiny clawed fingers. The touch was gentle, like a human child reaching for comfort. Jake knelt down so he was at the same level as the little one. Hey there, small warrior. Do not worry. We are all getting out of here together. He stood up and turned on his communication device. Amy, I need you to prepare the shuttle for as many passengers as possible. Take out everything we do not absolutely need. Jake, what are you thinking? Amy's voice crackled through the static. I am thinking we are taking everyone. Dr. Zethkin made a sound that might have been surprise or disbelief. Human, you do not understand what you are trying to do. When Veltar cubs get very scared, they enter what we call storm fear. They become wild animals. Even their own parents cannot control them when this happens. Jake looked at the cubs again. They were huddled together, their big eyes reflecting the emergency lights. He could see they were already getting more frightened as the storm outside grew louder. Their soft chittering was becoming sharper, more panicked. Then we make sure they do not get that scared, Jake said simply. He knelt among the cubs and began speaking in quiet, steady tones. To his surprise and the amazement of the adult Veltar, the young ones responded to his voice. Their chittering became softer, and they stopped pressing so tightly together. Jake had spent time learning about Veltar culture when humans first met them. He knew that cubs responded to calm confidence and strong leadership, just like frightened human children did. Listen, little warriors, he said, using the tone he had learned for talking to nervous new soldiers. We are going on a big adventure. You need to be very brave, just like your parents taught you. Dr. Velnara watched with fascination. How do you know to speak to them that way? Most aliens cannot communicate with our young at all. Children are children no matter what planet they come from, Jake replied. They need to feel safe and to understand what is happening. Amy's voice came through his communicator again. Jake, we have a big problem. The shuttle's air system cannot handle that many passengers for the long flight back through these storms. We will run out of clean air to breathe. Jake closed his eyes and did quick math in his head. The numbers were terrible. They could make it back to the ship, but just barely. Any delay, any problem at all, and they would all die together. Copy that, Amy. We will make it work somehow. Dr. Zethkan had heard the radio message. You see? This is why our leaders knew you would abandon the cubs. Logic says it cannot be done. Save who you can save. Jake stood up, his face serious but determined. Your leaders do not know humans very well, do they? He began planning how to get everyone out. Dr. Colmiran would need to be carried on a stretcher because he could not walk. Dr. Velnara could walk but was in a lot of pain. Dr. Zethkan was the only adult healthy enough to help with the cubs. Here is what we are going to do, Jake announced. Amy will fly the shuttle. Dr. Zethkan and Dr. Velnara will watch the cubs during the flight. I will take care of Dr. Colmiran and manage the air system. And if the cubs panic during the flight through the storms? Dr. Zethkan asked. Jake picked up the smallest cub, the one who had first approached him. The little one made happy purring sounds and snuggled against his chest like a kitten. Then I will keep them calm. Impossible. You are not Veltar. Cubs do not trust aliens like that. But as they got ready to leave, all 7 cubs moved closer to Jake. They followed him around and responded when he spoke to them. Dr. Velnara watched with growing amazement. In 30 years of studying how cubs behave, she whispered, I have never seen anything like this. They trust you completely. Outside, the storm was getting stronger. Lightning flashed more often, and the wind howled like a living thing trying to break into their shelter. Jake knew they were running out of time. Everyone ready? He asked. The cubs looked up at him with their big, trusting eyes. Dr. Zethkin still looked like he thought the plan would fail, but he nodded. Dr. Velnara helped support Dr. Colmaran as they prepared to move him. Jake opened his communicator one more time. Amy, fire up the engines. We are coming out. As they prepared to leave the safety of the shelter, Jake realized that the next few hours would decide more than just who lived or died. They would show the galaxy what humans were really made of. Getting everyone from the shelter to the shuttle became the hardest thing Jake had ever done. The wind outside was so strong it could knock a person down. Lightning struck the ground around them every few seconds, leaving smoking holes in the dirt. Jake carried Dr. Colmaran on a stretcher with Dr. Zethkin's help. The injured Veltar was unconscious and very heavy. Dr. Velnara limped beside them, trying to keep the cubs together as they walked through the storm. The cubs were terrified. The noise of thunder and wind made them cry out in high, scared voices. They pressed against each other and against the adults, their small bodies shaking with fear. Jake could see they were starting to panic, just like Dr. Zethkan had warned. Stay close to me, little warriors, Jake called out over the storm noise. We are almost to our ship. Somehow his voice cut through their fear. The cubs looked at him and followed his movements, even though lightning was flashing all around them. Dr. Velnara watched in amazement as the young ones obeyed Jake better than they usually obeyed their own kind. Inside the shuttle, Amy had removed every piece of equipment that was not absolutely necessary. The passenger area was cramped and uncomfortable, but there was room for everyone if they squeezed together. Life support is going to be very tight, Amy warned as they got everyone settled. We have maybe enough air for the flight back, but no room for mistakes. Jake helped strap Dr. Colmaran onto a medical bed. The Veltar's breathing was getting worse and his body temperature was dropping. Jake was worried he might not survive the trip even if they had enough air. The cubs huddled together in the center of the passenger area. They were making more noise now, chittering and crying as the shuttle's engines started up. The vibration and sound frightened them even more. This is what I was afraid of, Dr. Zethkan said grimly. They are entering the first stage of storm fear. Soon they will become completely wild. Jake knelt among the cubs as the shuttle lifted off. The moment they left the ground, the storm hit them with full force. The shuttle bucked and rolled like a wild horse trying to throw off its rider. Lightning struck their shields again and again, making loud crashes that hurt everyone's ears. The cubs' fear turned to terror. They began making shrill, panicked sounds that filled the small space. Their eyes went wide with fright, and they started trying to climb over each other to find somewhere safe to hide. Dr. Velnara tried to calm them using traditional Veltar methods, speaking in their ancient language and making soothing gestures, but the cubs were too scared to listen. They were entering full storm fear, just as Dr. Zethkan had predicted. I told you this would happen, Dr. Zethkan said over the noise. Cubs in storm fear cannot be reasoned with. They will wear themselves out and die from the stress before we reach your ship. The shuttle lurched violently to one side, throwing everyone against the wall. Equipment rattled and sparked. Warning lights flashed on Amy's control panel as the storm tried to tear them apart. Jake unbuckled himself from his seat next to Dr. Colmaran and moved to the cubs. The shuttle shook so hard he could barely keep his balance, but he managed to settle down among the terrified young ones. Hey there, my brave warriors, he said softly. His voice somehow carried over the storm and their cries. Remember what I told you about being brave? He began to sing. It was an old song his mother had sung to him when he was scared during thunderstorms back on Earth. The words meant nothing to the Veltar cubs, but something about the rhythm and tone seemed to reach them. The melody was simple and steady like a heartbeat. Jake kept singing even as the shuttle rolled and shook around them. One by one, the cubs stopped their panicked crying and began to listen. Jake gathered them closer, using his body to create a protective circle as the shuttle continued to shake violently. He switched between lullabies and marching songs, anything with a steady beat that might calm them down. The cubs gradually relaxed. Their breathing became more regular and they stopped trying to climb over each other. They pressed against Jake's sides and chest, finding comfort in his steady presence. Dr. Velnara stared in disbelief. They are responding to you better than they respond to their own parents during emergencies. How is this possible? Sometimes it does not matter if you understand the words, Jake said quietly while still singing. What matters is feeling that someone strong is taking care of you. Amy's voice crackled over the communication system, competing with the storm noise. Life support is failing faster than we calculated. The air scrubbers cannot handle this many passengers. We have maybe 20 minutes of breathable air left. Jake's heart started beating fast, but he kept his voice calm for the cubs. Amy, how long until we reach the horizon? 25 minutes if these wind currents do not get worse. But Jake, they are getting worse. Dr. Zethkan met Jake's eyes across the small passenger area. Both of them understood what the numbers meant. They were going to be 5 minutes short of air. 5 minutes that could mean the difference between life and death for everyone on board. Jake began thinking fast. He could slow down his own breathing using meditation techniques he had learned in survival training. But even that would not be enough to save everyone. He looked down at the cubs pressed against him. 7 innocent lives who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place when disaster struck. The adult Veltar might survive longer with less air because their bodies were bigger and stronger, but the cubs were more fragile. Dr. Zethkan, Jake said quietly, I need you to take care of Dr. Kolmiran. Watch his breathing and keep him stable. What are you planning, human? Jake was already reaching for the life support controls, adjusting the settings to give more air to the cubs and the injured Dr. Kolmiran. He began slowing his own breathing, entering a hibernation-like state that would reduce how much air he needed. Jake, what are you doing? Amy called from the pilot's seat. Buying us time, he replied. His voice was already becoming slower and more controlled. Just get us home, Amy. The cubs seemed to sense something was happening. They pressed closer to him, their warm bodies providing comfort even as Jake began to feel lightheaded from the reduced oxygen. He kept one hand on each of them, letting them know he was still there even as his consciousness started to fade. Dr. Velnara watched in growing respect and disbelief. He is giving up his own life for cubs that are not even his species. I have never seen such behavior from any alien race. Humans are strange, Dr. Zethkan said quietly. But his voice had changed. The dismissive tone was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect. Through the haze of oxygen deprivation, Jake maintained his protective hold on the cubs. His training had taught him how to survive in low-oxygen environments. But this was pushing the limits of what any human could endure. The cubs stayed calm, somehow sensing that Jake was keeping them safe even as he sacrificed himself for them. They made soft, comfortable sounds and snuggled closer, their trust in him complete and absolute. Amy fought the controls as the storm tried to tear the shuttle apart. Lightning continued to strike their shields, and the wind currents threw them around like a leaf in a hurricane. But she was one of the best pilots in the fleet, and she refused to give up. Contact with the horizon established, she announced. Medical teams are standing by. 3 minutes to docking. 3 minutes that felt like hours. Jake's vision was getting dark around the edges and his hands felt numb. But somehow he kept his arms steady around the cubs, protecting them even as his own body began to shut down. Dr. Kulmaran's condition had stabilized thanks to Dr. Zethkan's care and the extra oxygen Jake had given him. The cubs remained calm and quiet, trusting in the human who was giving everything to keep them safe. Finally, after what seemed like forever, Amy's voice came over the speakers one more time. Docking complete. Medical teams boarding now. But even as rescue arrived, Jake's consciousness was fading. The last thing he felt was the soft touch of small clawed hands on his arms. And the last thing he heard was the cubs chittering softly, as if they were trying to comfort him the way he had comforted them. Jake woke up slowly in the medical bay of the horizon. Clean air flowed into his lungs through a breathing mask, and the steady beep of medical machines told him he was alive. His head felt fuzzy and his body was weak, but he was breathing normally again. The first thing he did was look around for the cubs. Through the clear wall between medical rooms, he could see them in the next area. All 7 were moving around, being checked by both human and Veltar medical staff. They looked healthy and unharmed. You are awake, said a familiar voice. Captain Burke appeared beside his bed, looking relieved. How do you feel? Tired, but good, Jake said, his voice rough from the breathing mask. Are the cubs really okay? All 7 are perfectly healthy. Dr. Velnara says it is amazing they show no signs of trauma after what they went through. She thinks your presence during the flight prevented permanent psychological damage. Jake tried to sit up, but Captain Burke gently pushed him back down. Rest, you came very close to dying from lack of oxygen. The medical team says you saved everyone by reducing your own air consumption. Through the clear wall, Jake watched the cubs playing with toys that the human medical staff had given them. They seemed happy and curious, not frightened anymore. One of them, The smallest one, who had first approached him in the research station, looked toward his room and made soft chittering sounds. Dr. Colmaran is recovering too, Captain Burke continued. The extra oxygen you gave him probably saved his life. Dr. Velnara's injuries are healing well. Dr. Zethkan was not seriously hurt. What did the Veltar Council say about the rescue? Captain Burke smiled. That is an interesting story. Dr. Velnara sent a complete report to her leaders about what happened. The behavior you showed, the bond you made with the cubs, the sacrifice you were willing to make. It has challenged everything they believed about human nature. Dr. Zethkan entered the medical bay, carrying a data pad. His expression was different from before, less suspicious, more thoughtful. Human Martinez. May I speak with you? Of course, Doctor. I must ask you something that has troubled me greatly since our rescue. Why did you not abandon the cubs when logic said you should? You risked your life, risked the mission, risked all our lives for young ones that were not your responsibility. Jake thought about the question carefully. It was not the first time someone had asked him why he made the choices he did. Because they needed me. That is not a real answer. You could have saved the adults easily. We could have had more offspring later. The logical choice was clear. Doctor, can I ask you something? Do you have cubs of your own? Dr. Zethkan's expression softened slightly. Yes, 2 cubs. A son and a daughter. If they were trapped somewhere, and the only person who could save them was someone you did not trust completely, someone from a species you thought was weak, would you want that person to make the logical choice? The Veltar scientist was quiet for a long moment. He looked through the clear wall at the cubs playing in the next room. I understand your point. The council was wrong about humans, Jake continued. We do not abandon those who need us just because it is easier or makes more sense. We protect them because it is the right thing to do, because they are innocent, because someone has to stand up for those who cannot protect themselves. Dr. Velnara appeared in the doorway. She moved more easily now that her injuries were treated. Lieutenant Commander Martinez, I wanted to thank you personally. Your actions have saved not just 7 lives, but may have changed how our 2 species see each other. How so? The bond you formed with the cubs should have been impossible, she explained. Veltar young do not trust aliens. They barely trust their own kind outside their immediate family, yet they responded to you as if you were their parent. Jake watched the cubs through the wall. They had noticed him sitting up and were pressing against the clear barrier, chittering excitedly. Maybe trust is not about species. Maybe it is about recognizing when someone genuinely wants to help. Dr. Zethkan nodded slowly. For generations we have taught our young that humans are weak, because you let emotions control your actions instead of logic. Today I learned that what we called weakness might actually be your greatest strength. The Veltar High Council has requested a formal meeting, Dr. Velnara added. They want to discuss expanding our alliance. They specifically mentioned wanting to learn more about human protective instincts and how they might be applied to joint military operations. Captain Burke looked pleased. The story of the storm rescue is already spreading through the fleet communications. Other alien species are taking notice. A human who risked everything to save alien children. It is changing how they see us. Jake slowly stood up from the medical bed. His legs were still unsteady, but he felt stronger. What will happen to the cubs now? They will return to their families on Veltar Prime, Dr. Velnara replied. But Dr. Zethkan and I have discussed something with our council. We believe there would be great value in establishing a joint research program. What kind of research? Studying cooperation between species, especially how different races can work together to protect young ones. The cubs' reaction to you has shown us something we never thought possible. Dr. Zethkan added, the council wants to understand how a human could create such a strong bond with Veltar cubs in such a short time. This could help our species learn to work together in ways we never imagined. Jake asked if he could visit the cubs before they left. The medical staff agreed, and when he entered their room, all 7 immediately rushed to him. They clustered around his legs, chittering happily and pressing against him for attention. He knelt down among them, and they climbed onto his lap and shoulders like happy kittens. The smallest one, who had become especially attached to him, settled against his chest and purred softly. You are going home now, brave warriors, he said gently. Back to your families who love you and have been worried about you. The cubs seemed to understand his tone even though they could not understand his words. They made soft, content sounds and snuggled closer. Dr. Velnara watched with continued amazement. The bond transcends language and species barriers, she murmured. This will be studied for generations. You have shown us that care and protection are universal languages. Later, Jake stood on the observation deck watching the Veltar transport ship prepare to leave. The rescued scientists and cubs were aboard, heading home to safety. Amy Collins joined him at the viewing window. I heard the Veltar Council wants to discuss joint training programs, she said. They are interested in learning human rescue techniques and protective strategies. It is hard to believe that saving some children could change so much. It is not just that you saved them. Jake, it is how you saved them. You treated those alien cubs like they were your own family. That kind of behavior challenges everything other species think they know about humans. Through the viewport, Jake could see the transport ship's lights as it prepared to jump to hyperspace. Soon the cubs would be back with their families, safe and loved. The storm that had threatened to kill them was now just a memory. The Veltar expected you to leave the cubs behind because they thought human survival instincts were purely selfish, Amy continued. They could not understand that human strength comes from protecting others, not abandoning them. Jake nodded, thinking about Dr. Zethkan's questions. The Veltar had expected him to make the logical choice, the easy choice. They had not understood that for humans, the right choice and the easy choice were often completely different things. The transport ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its precious cargo home. Jake realized that this mission had done more than save lives. It had planted seeds of understanding that might grow into something much larger. 6 months after the storm rescue, Jake Martinez received an unexpected package. It arrived on a regular supply ship from Earth, but the return address showed it had come from Veltar Prime, the homeworld of the alien species he had helped rescue. Inside the package were 7 small carved figures, each one showing a Veltar cub in a different pose. They were made from a beautiful blue-green stone that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The carving work was incredibly detailed, showing every whisker and claw with perfect accuracy. With the figures was a message written in both Veltar script and English. Jake read it carefully, feeling a warm sensation in his chest as he understood what the cubs had sent him. To the human who showed us that strength is not measured by what you can abandon, but by what you choose to carry. These cubs will grow up knowing that courage comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest warriors are those who fight not for victory, but for love. The storms of life are many, but we will remember always the human who carried us through. The message was signed with 7 small handprints, still tiny but clearly growing bigger. Jake could picture the cubs, now safe at home, pressing their little paws into ink to mark the paper. They would be almost twice as big now, learning to hunt and play like normal Veltar children. Captain Burke found him in his quarters, holding the carved figures and reading the message for the 3rd time. Good news from your friends? They are doing well, growing up strong and healthy. Jake set the figures carefully on his desk where he could see them every day. Dr. Velnara included a note saying they ask about me all the time. They want to know when the nice human will come visit them. That might happen sooner than you think, Captain Burke said with a smile. I have some news about your next assignment. She handed him an official-looking data pad. Jake read through it quickly, his eyebrows rising in surprise. The Veltar Council has formally requested you to head up a new joint training program, she explained. They want to establish a rescue academy where human and Veltar personnel learn to work together. You would be in charge of developing the curriculum. Jake looked up from the data pad. They want me to teach them. More than that, they want to learn what they call the human way of thinking about rescue operations. Dr. Zethkan specifically mentioned that Veltar rescue doctrine focuses on saving the most valuable individuals first, but your mission showed them a different approach. What kind of different approach? Saving everyone even when it seems impossible. Taking risks for those who cannot take risks for themselves. Making emotional decisions that turn out to be strategically brilliant. Jake thought about this. The Veltar had always been logical, practical people. They made decisions based on mathematics and efficiency. The idea that they wanted to learn about human emotional decision-making was surprising. There is more, Captain Burke continued. The story of your rescue has spread to other alien species. The Karathi Republic has asked for human advisors to help with their disaster response teams. The hegemony wants to discuss new search and rescue protocols based on what they call human protective instincts. I just did what anyone would do. No, Jake. You did what humans do. and the galaxy is starting to understand the difference. She showed him another report on her datapad. Intelligence estimates that human-alien cooperation has improved by 40% since news of the storm rescue spread. Other species are requesting joint missions specifically because they want humans involved in operations where civilians might be at risk. Jake walked to his window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those points of light, 7 young Veltar were growing up with a different understanding of what humans were like. They would tell their friends and families about the human who risked his life to save them. "There is something else you should know," Captain Burke said. "Dr. Zethkan has written a paper about the rescue for the Veltar scientific community. He calls it the strategic value of emotional decision-making, and it is causing quite a stir in their military colleges." "What does he say?" "That humans make better allies than the Veltar originally thought because human emotional responses often lead to tactically superior outcomes. He argues that caring about individual lives, even when it seems inefficient, actually creates stronger unit cohesion and higher mission success rates." Jake smiled, thinking about the serious Veltar scientist trying to explain human emotions to his logical colleagues. "I would like to read that paper. He sent you a copy along with a personal note. He says he has been studying human military history and has found dozens of examples where emotional decisions led to strategic victories. He wants to know if you would be willing to give lectures at the Veltar War College." The idea of teaching alien military officers about human decision-making was both exciting and terrifying. Jake had never thought of himself as a teacher, but he was intrigued by the possibility. "What about the Cubs?" he asked. "Would I get to see them again?" The training academy would be established on Veltar Prime, near the capital city. Dr. Velnara specifically mentioned that the Cubs families would love to meet you. "Apparently you are something of a legend among young Veltar." Jake picked up one of the carved figures, running his thumb over the smooth stone. The artist had captured perfectly the way the Cubs looked when they were scared but trying to be brave, the way they had looked at him during the storm. "When would this start?" "Next month, if you accept." The Veltar are eager to begin. They say the next generation of their rescue personnel needs to learn both Veltar efficiency and human compassion. Jake thought about his conversation with Dr. Zethkan after the rescue. The alien had asked why humans made the choices they did, why they risked everything for those who could not protect themselves. At the time, Jake had given a simple answer, but now he understood it was much more complex. Humans did not save others because it was logical or efficient. They saved others because abandoning innocent lives felt wrong at a level deeper than logic. It was not about mathematics or strategic thinking. It was about recognizing that every life had value, regardless of species or circumstances. "I accept," Jake said finally. "But I have one condition." "What is that?" "I want Amy Collins as my co-instructor. If we are going to teach aliens about human rescue techniques, we need to show them how human teams work together." Captain Burke nodded approvingly. "I think she would love that assignment. She's been telling everyone who will listen about piloting through that storm with a shuttle full of alien children." Jake looked at the carved figures again. Each one was unique, showing a different personality and expression. The artist had known these Cubs personally, had captured not just their appearance but their individual spirits. "There is one more thing," Captain Burke said. "The Veltar Council has created a new award called the Cross-Species Honor. It is given to individuals who risk their lives to protect members of other species. You are the first recipient." She handed him a small box containing a medal unlike anything he had ever seen. It was made from the same blue-green stone as the carved figures, shaped like a star with 7 points. In the center was an engraving showing hands of different species reaching toward each other. "The 7 points represent the 7 Cubs you saved," she explained. "But the Veltar say it also represents the 7 different species that have now requested human involvement in their rescue operations." Jake held the medal, feeling its weight. It was beautiful, but more than that, it represented something important. It showed that his actions had consequences beyond just saving a few lives. He had helped change how an entire galaxy saw humanity. 3 weeks later, Jake stood on the observation deck of a transport ship approaching Veltar Prime. The planet below was beautiful, with golden continents and deep blue oceans. Cities sparkled like jewels in the sunlight, connected by gleaming transportation networks. Amy Collins joined him at the viewing window. "Ready to become a teacher?" "Ready to learn as much as I teach," Jake replied. "I think the Veltar will have things to show us too." As their ship entered the atmosphere, Jake thought about the 7 cubs who were now 7 young Veltar, probably excited about meeting their human friend again. He thought about Dr. Zethkan and Dr. Velnara, who had become unlikely allies in bridging the gap between their species. Most of all, he thought about the storm that had brought them all together. What had seemed like a disaster had become an opportunity to show the galaxy that humans were not the weak, emotional creatures other species had believed them to be. Instead, humans were something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that grew stronger by protecting others, that found courage and compassion, and that measured success not by what they could take, but by what they could save. The transport ship landed at the spaceport near the new rescue academy. Through the windows, Jake could see a crowd of Veltar waiting to greet them. In the front of the group, 7 young figures bounced excitedly, their golden eyes bright with anticipation. The cubs had grown, but Jake would have recognized them anywhere. They had kept their promise to remember the human who carried them through the storm. Now it was time to see what new storms they could weather together.